Good afternoon. This is Joe Scarano from Arrays. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our FastFund Online training webinar series. Today we'll be covering the application accounting and in accounting, the changes we've made to the cash disbursements module. As you know, we've updated our vendor invoices, our pay bills, our purchase orders, our client bills, and revenue journal and journal entries. So cash disbursements was the latest update. And as you can see, this is the new screen. It's a responsive screen. And we've actually had a few comments regarding how this screen might be too big and it impacts on data entry. If you think that the screen is too big, you can make it smaller. This is a responsive environment. So if I make this smaller, you can see how the elements of the screen are shrinking with it. So on the right side of the screen where you see date, type, reference, and amount, as I make the screen smaller, those items are rearranging themselves on the screen so they don't get cut off. So you can change the screen size. You can also change your screen resolution. So if you make it bigger, the screen will adjust to the size that you change it to. So this gives you much more flexibility on different types of modules or monitors. So if you're working with a large monitor or a tablet device, the screen will adjust to the size of your monitor and also the resolution. The major difference that we've made in our cash disbursement screen is if you have the accounts payable module. With the accounts payable module, you're entering vendor invoices, and those vendor invoices will appear as unpaid bills in pay bills that you can then schedule to pay and print checks. If you're paying your bills online and not printing checks, and you want to pay your vendors by recording the payment through cash disbursements, when you open cash disbursements, the default is cash disbursements to pay other names. As I type in a name here, you're only going to see other names or constituents, or possibly you might see a name that is an employee in case you're reimbursing an employee. If you have the payroll module, you might also see clients here in case you are have accounts receivable and you need to refund a client. What you won't see in cash disbursements are vendors. In order to pay a vendor, you have to switch to vendor payments. As you can see, when I switch to vendor payments, the bottom half of the screen changes, which will then show the open vendor invoices based on the vendor that you enter. So if I enter a vendor, select the vendor, it brings up the open vendor invoices. If I go back to cash disbursements, it's going to prompt me, do I want to save this or exit? I'm going to exit. And in cash disbursements, we now have the ability to track recording of expenses to everyone but vendors. When you pay a vendor through a cash disbursement, you have to go to vendor payments. We had a few support requests when we first released this. It was a little confusing, understandably so, because it's something new. But again, if you're paying a vendor, you want to click vendor payments. If it's anyone but a vendor, you go to cash disbursements. So let's enter a cash disbursement. Enter the payee. You have the ability to add new other names on the fly from cash disbursements. So if I enter a new other name, it'll say no results found. If you want to add this, you click on enter a new other name, and that name will automatically be added to your other names database. You can add the address, And now we could schedule a check to be printed. When we schedule a check to be printed, it's going to change the cash account to the system account for checks to be printed. If it's not a check to be printed, the next check number will appear in your reference. If this is not a check, if it was an online payment, you can do ACH or debit memo or whatever other reference you want to enter here. You put in the amount. You can now also attach a file to your cash disbursement. So if you have an electronic copy of the bill that you're paying, you could click on Choose File, select the file that you want to attach, and then you click Open. And then when you save the record, save the transaction, this file will be attached to the transaction that you can then view and print later on. So now we get down to the distribution area. Of course, you can still use the allocations if you have the direct cost allocations module, or you can always manually key in your account codes. You can allocate this to multiple line items, select a project code, enter a memo. Another new thing we've added is the ability to change the order of your line item distributions. So if for some reason, after I save this transaction, if I want to change the order of the display of these accounts, I can click on this navigator double arrow and take a line item and move it up or down. And then of course you need to save it if you're making those changes. As you can see, after I saved this document, this transaction, this is now available to click on it to open it up. If you're paying a vendor, you click on vendor payments, select the vendor, and once again, only vendors will appear when you're in vendor payments. You cannot add vendors on the fly in cash disbursements. Vendors can only be added on the fly if you're doing a vendor invoice. So you select the vendor. If you're printing a check, you schedule to be printed. If it's manual, then you go in and add the amount that you're paying and then apply the amount against the open vendor invoices. Okay, so now if I do save and new, it'll clear the transaction and I'm still in vendor payments. If I go back to pay bills, you'll see that those two bills from Acme Supply are no longer paid. I'm sorry, no longer open. They are now paid. So if I go to my lists and vendors and open up Acme Supply, there's the check that I just entered. I can drill down to this check. Okay. If I bring up that new vendor that we added earlier, or new other name, you can see the address was saved. All of the new transaction screens also give you the ability to drill down to the entity. If I needed to look at this, a new other name, I just click on this and it'll open it up. And if I want, I can then enter the contact. Oh, wrong field. Let's James Smith, and I could update the other name record. Now this is a new web tab that opened up. Here's my disbursement and I drill down to the other name. The final thing that we've done to cash disbursements is change the way we allow you to void checks or reverse checks. So we're now currently working with our BB&T cash account. If I go to the bank reconciliation, let's save this first, or exit. Let's just exit. So my BB&T bank account has been reconciled through 10/31. That's why 11/30 is showing as my next month to be reconciled. Let's say we got a call from Acme Supply where they lost this check number 11602. So we need to issue a new check to them. If I go to my control register, and pull up that check, 11602. If I open this check and I want to void it, and I do save, it's not going to allow me to void it. The reason it's not going to allow me to void it is I've already reconciled 10/31/2021. If I go back to my reconciliation and pull up my October reconciliation, you'll see that that check number appears as an outstanding check. Because it's showing as an outstanding check, technically I should not void it, because if I void it, this will change from 3,500 to 0, and my register balance will be different than what shows on my bank reconciliation. So what you need to do when you go to that check, if I open up that check again, is reverse it. Okay, I'm reversing it today, so I can say vendor lost check. Okay, so now if I go to my bank reconciliation, you'll see that check showing in deposits and other credits because I reversed it. So it's adding it back to cash. So when I finally do my November reconciliation, I mark this as cleared and I mark this as cleared because this has now been reversed. And if I go to pay bills, the bill that was paid with that check, or the multiple bills that were paid with that check, these 4 bills were all paid with that single check. I can now go to print checks, select it, and print and post the check to pay Acme Supply. So now when I go to my bank rec on 11/19, we'll see the new check for Acme Supply right here. So that those are all the adjustments that we've made and enhancements to the cash disbursements module. In review, you now have to separate disbursements from vendor payments. When you look at a transaction, if for some reason you want to change the order, let's go to a cash disbursement. If you want to change the order of the transaction, you can drag things up and down. You can attach documents. Of course, you can still mark a transaction as recurring. You cannot void a check if the check is dated prior to your last bank reconciliation. It has to be reversed. Well, I'm Joe Scarano from Arrays. I hope you appreciate all of the hard work our development team has been putting into our enhancements. Thank you for your time today, and have a great day and a great weekend, and we'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.